Our next presenter is Nick Sartore. Nick founded Shift Performing Arts Society in the fall of 2007 with a vision to creating exciting, innovative, live performance art. He's a graduate of the Arts and Entertainment Management program at Coquitlam University and has worked on events such as the Port Moody Festival of the Arts and the Wearable Arts Awards. He has also worked at the Vancouver International Fringe Festival. Nick is currently working as administrative coordinator at Carousel Theatre on Granville Island. Nick?
Hello there. Thanks for coming out on Oscar night. I'm gonna check my phone at intermission, see who won. Okay, I'm thrilled to talk to you today about an event that Shift created back in February 2009. We created an event called the Surreal Project. We were all really excited by the idea of surrealism. And surrealism is a cultural movement that began in the early 1920s, basically covered literature as well as some visual art. And so surrealist work features the element of surprise and unexpected juxtapositions. So we thought, in a live performing arts context, how could we take that concept and bring it into that space? And so we created the Surreal Project. The photos you're seeing today are from the Surreal Project 2. This was the second version of the event, which was a little bit more site-specific. We mounted it in February 2009. We did a few things that was especially interesting. The main theme in the Surreal Project was to take the audience out of the theater. So obviously taking the audience out of the theater means that we had to take the performers out of the theater to take the audience out of the theater. So as you're seeing here, the first thing we did was created a show called Suspended Reality. It was a show that was directed by Jennifer Clune, who is an actor about town. And she created this piece with 4 actors who were hung in the air. This is all at Port Moody Civic Center, or the Inlet Theatre. And so this was in the lobby, and basically what we did was we hung 4 actors in the air and created a surrealist world with some stories for these 4 people in the air. So they basically had an alternate reality. And of course the juxtaposition there being that you're not used to looking up in the air perhaps and seeing people engage and interact with each other in that kind of space. So they each were interactive with the audience as well as interactive with each other. This was another thing that we explored quite a bit with the event, was trying to think about how we could create something that was exciting for the audience since they weren't in the theater or a traditional theater space. So some more exciting tricks that we did here. We actually were able to hang this trapeze. It was probably the most technically challenging thing that we had to do for the event. The other thing we did was integrate the actors right into performance. So sometimes in the audience, in this case, most of the audience I think was inside the theater watching a show, we actually had actors who would come out and perform inside where the audience was sort of mingling. So you just imagine that you'd be standing around perhaps waiting for a show or planning your next show when a performance begins and it's happening all around you, and you can't help but become sort of an integral part of that performance. In this particular one, we had some actors who would pick random lines from the novel Moby Dick, and they picked random words and then would type them into with the computer, and then patrons could come up and put on the earphones and hear these random words in various sequences and some backwards, and it was an interesting audible experience, again taking something that's perhaps a bit theatrical but also audible. And again, performance art is meant to happen sort of naturally. So it's best described as something that is just happening. There is often no beginning, no end, no traditional or linear plot that you may be used to with theater as well. This is a piece that was originally created by Yoko Ono. It's called Cut Piece, and she originally performed it. And the idea is that an actor is sitting somewhere or is in a space, and people come up and cut away pieces of clothing from that actor until the actor is theoretically left with no clothing. So it was a very interesting piece that we ran for about an hour every night, and again was interactive and gave the audience an opportunity to come out and participate with the work. We also took over the whole space. This was something that we worked very hard with our partners at the City of Port Moody to make happen, was to be able to use the space. So this is actually the underground parking lot of the Port Moody Civic Center, where the library and the City Hall building is. And so we created a little surrealist world that people could move through and had a variety of things happening. This was a particularly interesting one. What's propped below him is a pogo stick, so he was jumping around outside on a pogo stick. We had some curious installations like this from one of our board of directors, Shanda Walters, who created some very interesting pieces that were happening outside. I think the next one is interesting as well. We created a nest for an actor who was playing Bird, and so she had this nest set up just outside the front of the building, which is a trailer, and we lit her, and she had some very interesting interactions with the audience as well. So of course, playing with, like, once again, the traditional concept of you go into a theater, you sit down, a play happens, and you leave. We wanted to change that a little bit. We did do a few shows, though, that were a little bit more traditional in that context. This was one of them. It was called Water Worlds Under the Bard, and it basically included some Shakespeare, as a matter of fact, and some movement. So we tried to focus on bringing interdisciplinary work to the stage as well. So not just focusing on theater, but also working with some contemporary dancers, and you'll see that, I think, in the next image, perhaps a little bit better than this one here. And it was something that we really tried to do, was to, again, bring the audience into a space where they perhaps weren't used to to being not a traditional theater experience, and something that's a bit more unusual. And it's something that we're really excited about at Shift, and creating site-specific work is interesting, especially in the Tri-Cities, where theater companies, and there are a few of them who are producing fantastic work, but it's all fantastic work in a conventional context. And so what makes us very excited and inspired to create this kind of work is that it's challenging some of those traditional ideas. So this is one of the dancers that I was mentioning earlier. And one of the pieces that we created that had a bit of dialogue, so it was a bit of intertwined dialogue with some movement. There were some sort of other elements. This is one of the last ones that I wanted to mention, and it was particularly interesting. We created in one of the meeting rooms of the Port Moody City Hall basically a zoo exhibit, and it was a person, a human on exhibit, and the idea was this was many years in the future, and someone was, or artificial intelligence had taken over, and they had put a human on display in what was ideally supposed to be a robot zoo exhibit, I suppose. And this was one of our directors, Adam Yanich, who created that. It was an interesting piece for, once again, people to experience something that perhaps is a little bit contrast to what they normally are used to seeing. Thank you very much.